All right. So
No worries.
excellent. Thank you, everyone. So hello, everyone. A warm welcome to today's EENA webinar on the transmission of medical data to PSAPs through Google's emergency location service. In today's interconnected world, the monitoring of health via smartphones and other smart devices is becoming increasingly popular. This presents a significant opportunity for PSAPs to receive valuable medical data about patients, enabling them to provide more accurate and efficient emergency care. Before I go further, let me remind you that this webinar is automatically captioned in your language on the screen. To activate the caption, please follow the instructions written on the screen. Again, you can choose, the spoken language is English, and you can choose your output language, which should be your language. Back to today's webinar. Through Google's emergency location service, a service which many PSAPs across Europe already use, Android device users can voluntarily share crucial medical information, including allergies, existing medical conditions, and emergency contact details with PSAPs upon initiating an emergency calls. This empowers PSAPs to gain a comprehensive understanding of a patient's medical history, allowing them to provide more informed and tailored assistance. In this webinar, we will address the following questions. What are the specific types of medical data and additional information transmitted through ELS? What are the ethical considerations and privacy safeguards in place to protect patient data while enabling its effective utilization? And how can you get this data if you want to receive it, which is crucial, of course, and I'm sure Salvo and Micah are going to speak about it. To answer these questions, I'm glad to welcome our two speakers, Salvatore Baglieri, Head of Operations, and Micah Berman, Product Manager at Google. Please note that for Micah, I think it's something like 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. So it's very early for him. So mostly Salvo will be speaking. I think Salvo, you're in London today. Yeah, and also a quick note for the attendees, please note that you can use the Q&A section of this webinar to ask questions at any time. They will be answered after the presentation. And that's it for me. Salvo and Micah, the floor is yours. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Good, we're good to go. So hello, everyone. I'm here in London. Micah is in California, so a bit early for him. You'll probably hear my voice a lot more today. Before we start, first of all, I want to thank EENA for this opportunity. We've been working with EENA for quite a long time. Instrumental for emergency services, I would say, in Europe and outside of Europe. And I want to thank the audience for the work you do. We visit PSAPs quite often, and we work a lot with emergency services, and we are very thankful for ensuring safety of all of us. And I'll start with a small video. I want to make sure that you can hear the audio. Hopefully, yes. Let me know if not.
Right now, we can't hear the audio, Salvo.
Do you hear the sound?
I couldn't hear right now, but
let me look at the settings. We got it to work. Share computer sound. Yes.
Because I have asthma.
It's okay now.
I was driving on the highway. I was getting lightheaded because I have asthma. I was on the side of the road, called 911. I said, I don't know where I am. Please just send an ambulance. I can't breathe. I was not sure I was gonna make it. The ambulance got there pretty quick. I don't think there were more than 6-7 minutes. I asked the paramedic, how did you find me? And they said, it was your phone. It sent your location. I said, wow, thank you. If I didn't have the emergency location services, I probably would not be here today.
So again, very thankful for the work you do. We know the importance of location during emergency calls and during emergencies. And so we want to do more. We want Android to be the safest operating system out there. And we are working every day for it. My name is Salvatore, based in London. I'm leading partnerships, open operations for Android safety. And with me, Micah, who's a product manager for ELS and other Android safety products. Today, we will walk through the tools that we can provide to call takers to make their life easier. So we'll just quickly review ELS, Emergency Location Service. I know many of you might know about it. Just make sure everybody's on the same page. We'll see how it works. We will understand what kind of data is available. You'll see it's not just location. There is more than the phone can provide. We'll try to understand what it is, what's needed to be to use emergency location service in your emergency call centers today. And after this webinar, we will share a one-pager cheat sheet. You don't need to take notes. We will provide you a summary of what is available to you and what's needed to add additional data to the information available to you right now. Everything you'll see here is already available, is already launched for 99.9% of the Android devices out there. The reason why we started working on it is this sentence. We looked at a study from the FCC in the US that told us reducing emergency response time by 60 seconds just in the US alone can save 10,000 lives every single year. So if you look at what technology can do, the question that we ask ourselves is, what can we do to enable Android users to get help wherever they are, whenever they need it? What can the phone, like we talk about smartphones, they're smart. So why don't using the smartness available in the phone to provide more help? And so why, if I order a taxi, an Uber, Lyft, why can I see where the Uber is? Why can the driver know my location? Why can I see when the driver will arrive? And this is just if I want to go to a pub or to a club or anywhere. Why, for the most important calls in my life, a call to 112 or 911, I can't have the same experience? Why I don't have technology helping me in the same way for something that is a lot more important? And that's why ELS started. So the way it works is very simple. The user makes an emergency call. The phone checks if that call is to a list of phone numbers that are considered emergency numbers. The phone uses all the sensors and information available to calculate the best possible location. And that location is sent as a text SMS or HTTP using a global standard to the authority. So the endpoint, what we call ELS partner, is the authority. And they define the configuration. They define the list of emergency numbers. The configuration runs in the phone. The data is computed on device and is sent directly. So we don't have visibility of those messages. The messages are sent from the phone to the authority directly. That's what ELS is about. Simple service, great return on investment. The location is very precise. It's exactly the same location that the user would see on Google Maps, the famous blue dot. ELS is available on the vast majority of Android devices in the market, is on by default. There is no setup required. The user doesn't have to install special apps. It runs as part of the Google Play services. We try to be flexible and we try to make the integration very easy. That's why we use global standard like AML, standard format. That's why we use text SMS and HTTP. And also we try to be flexible when it comes to configuration. But our partners can decide how many messages have to be sent, when, and what is the list of emergency numbers for that country. Then number 3, privacy is there by design because the information is sent from the phone directly to the first responders. We don't receive that information. It doesn't go through our servers. Even if we wanted to, we cannot read those messages. The information is private by definition. We are live now, and we're very proud of it, in 60 countries, slightly more than 60 countries now. You see in Europe, there is a lot of green, which makes me very happy. We're very close to launching in Canada, so also there, very happy about that. Poland, we really want to launch with you, please. And then one thing that doesn't make me happy is we still have, we're still trying to target the first launch in Africa. It's very important to me personally. Every life is important, and we are trying to work with any authority over there to have the first launch, and we look forward to launching there. We focus on 3 different areas as a team. We're a very small team, very ambitious. Quality, we want to make sure that the location is calculated quickly, is accurate, and is reliable. We know it's important. Growth, we want to launch in more countries. There are almost 300 countries in the world, and we want to launch in all of them. So there's still a lot of work to do. We want to help as many users as we can. But today, we are here to talk about usefulness. Can we go beyond location? We visit PSAPs and we try to understand what's the best way to recognize the person that needs help. What are the questions that the call takers ask to provide accurate data to an ambulance or to police or to fire brigade? And so that's why we are trying to provide more signals. So that's why we launched additional emergency information, and it's everything beyond location. The input we take is our visits and conferences, EENA, NENA, all those, everything is very helpful for us because ultimately PSAPs are the consumers of the data, they are the users, they know best what can help, what can make their life easier, and can provide help faster. So we decided to have additional emergency information on by default in most of the devices, but it is provided only when available. So this is the kind of information that the user needs to type in during the setup of the phone and can be updated through the safety app, personal safety app. And we also invite users to refresh this information as often as needed. So if there is a change in person's life, they can go there and they can update their emergency contacts, they can update their medical conditions, etc. And we'll see more details in those slides. The way this information is sent, again, from the device to the PSAP is as an HTTP message. So as part of the HTTP message, we are extending that with additional information. And we can work as much as we can. We can make sure the users type that information. We can make sure that users opt in to during an emergency call. We can make sure that devices send that information. But all of that is not useful unless that information is displayed on the screen of the call taker or in the ambulance or it's available for first responders. Again, all of it is available free of charge. Google doesn't charge and will never charge for this information. Obviously, your software vendor can charge you to modify the software, but the data is free, and we mandate the data to be available for free for any public authority. What kind of information do we share right now? Device language. I'll give an example. In London, 15% of the calls to emergency services are not in English. And I know many first responders, many call takers have services that translate. but it's really hard to get the language of a person. Not every language is easier to understand. And so having the language of the device is very useful. This is how it looks like from the user perspective. Just in San Francisco alone, in 1 year, there were almost 20,000 calls requiring translation. And sometimes it takes 10 minutes to understand the language of the user. The second thing that we share is emergency type. So for example, when I call an emergency number, there is a way to share silently the type of information, the type of help that I need. It could be medical, fire, or police. So when you call 911 or 112, we send what the user chose on the screen. Number 3 and number 4, car crash detection and fall detection. We share the information if that call is an automated call from the phone or from the watch. And number 2, we share the timestamp of when the car crash or the fall has been detected. Number 3, medical information. Again, user opt-in, and medical information includes date of birth, blood type, allergies, medications, medical conditions. It is important for an ambulance to know beforehand if there are special needs. And that's why we did screenshots directly from my phone. We encourage users to enter their medical information in emergency contacts. We are working on raising awareness, and we'll share more in next year about it. But we also want to encourage public safety to use that information that is critical for help. Please don't tell my mom that she's the last one in the list of emergency contacts there. Number 3, the last one is emergency contacts. Again, we share not only the name and the phone number, but we also share the relationships. So it could be father, mother, sister, etc. All that information is available right now, and we really want to enable it for our existing partners, for whoever has ELS Live, and we want to enable it also for any new integration that we're working on. We will share after this call, it will be available on the EENA website, what we call a cheat sheet. It's a one-pager where we share the table that you've seen in the previous slides. And the important bit is we share what's needed for you to get this information on your side. Get in touch with the authority that handles the ELS endpoint. Is normally or the carrier or the Minister of Interior or a private company, Rapid SOS, Carbine, Rapid Deploy, etc. We talk to all of them. With some of them, you're already live. So get in touch with your software vendor. They need to support the ingestion of this information, and then they obviously need to display this information to you when the call comes in or the text comes in. And then obviously very, very important, we need to make sure that policies and training are up to date for call takers. They need to know what to do with that information. We could test those things separately, but it's important that everything works end-to-end. At Google, we always differentiate between launching something versus landing. We want to make sure that this information is used and it helps users and helps call takers and PSAPs being more efficient. So the user can type this information into their safety app that is available in most of the devices. There is a Google safety app available on Pixel and other devices, but there are other safety apps for other OEMs, and they're all plugged into ELS through an SDK. So that part is already being taken care of. Then on the same app, the user needs to opt in to share that information during a call or an SMS to 911 or 112. And then on the other side, we need PSAPs to work on the endpoint. So in some cases, we need, if you support ELS via SMS, in parallel, you can enable an HTTP endpoint. And so when the phone makes an emergency call, the information is sent as an SMS, you're not touching that part, and in parallel as an HTTP message. So you're backward compatible. You just get the additional information over HTTP. Then the software vendor needs to enable this information to be displayed, and then the center management needs to update policies and procedures to use this data. We didn't stop there. So we are brainstorming internally on other kind of information that we could send. For instance, we know that abandoned calls or unwanted calls are a big problem for many countries. And so we want to make sure that that Android can provide information about that. That's why we are thinking about sharing the call source. Is this 112 call coming from the lock screen? Is it from the 5-button press? Is it the fall detection? So giving more information about the source of the call can help first responders and call takers and dispatchers understand more about the urgency of the call. We want to share dispatchable location if we have certainty. Could be the user is at home and that's the address. The user is at the work and that's the address. Or just very recently, somebody recommended the closest landmark or point of interest. The user is in front of a McDonald's. The user is in front of Google Office, etc. We're also thinking about sharing battery percentage, indoor versus outdoor detection. If you have a certain level of certainty, we could share that information. And obviously, the phone has also ways to understand activity that the user is just involved in. It could be the user is running, the user is walking, the phone is in the pocket. But this is the other kind of information that we are thinking about sharing. And again, we would love your input on that so that we can prioritize and we can understand what's useful. And we are always available at android-emergency.location@google.com. Thank you again for all the work you do. We are hoping we are useful in some ways. And that's our goal. That's why we're paid, but that's also why we work every day to make Android better. And now I welcome questions.
Thanks, Salvo. So everyone, please feel free to use the Q&A section to ask questions, please. Please don't really hesitate. Send your questions. I'm sure you have plenty of questions. It can also be suggestions or comments. Please don't hesitate to share it using the question and answer section of this webinar. There is a first question by Guido. So the question is the following. Are there any projects in Germany running ELS right now? We only know and use the AML endpoint in Freiburg, Berlin via our CAD system.
Sorry, can you repeat it again? There was a glitch.
The second part?
The whole question.
The whole question. Okay. Are there any projects in Germany running ELS right now? We only know and use the AML endpoint in Freiburg, Berlin via our CAD system.
So ELS is live in Germany. It's location only right now. But as soon as we get an HTTP endpoint, we would love to share that information. And as far as we know, the location should be available to any PSAP in the country. If not, get in touch and we'll make sure that whoever needs location will have it.
Excellent. Thank you. I hope this answers your question, Guido. Feel free to let us know as well in case it doesn't. So a question from Ricardo. I'm from city of Cape Town, South Africa. We are quite interested in implementing it here. Please, can we get in touch?
Yes, the answer is yes, 1,000 times yes.
Right.
Please drop us an email and we'll send you all the information available and we'll give you access to, we have a partner portal where we share specs. I mean, AML is a global standard, but we have everything needed to implement and everything needed to test ELS in your country or jurisdiction.
All right. That is very clear. So Ricardo, please do send an email to Salvo and he'll be following up. So you can use the email address that is displayed on the screen. Now many questions are coming. My friend Ina host one. I'm guessing it's Freddie. Can I ask a question? Okay, if not, yes, you can ask a question, Freddie. So I have your question here, and I will read your question a bit later. Thank you, Freddie. Or maybe it's Amy, actually. Sorry, maybe it's Amy. It's Amy, sorry. Sorry, there were two Ina host one at the beginning of this webinar, so I was a bit lost. Thanks, Amy. I'll ask your question later on as well. Thank you, Amy. So next question from an anonymous attendee. If you use ELS over SMS today, do we need to upgrade everything to HTTPS or just the additional data portion?
So well, that's a good question. It's not really an upgrade because SMS continues to run. So what is needed is enabling the HTTP channel. So the ELS messages are sent to both endpoints.
And maybe just to add a clarification, the only way to get the additional data we've described today is over HTTPS. So if you'd like this additional data, the medical information and other things, you do need to enable HTTPS. We don't send that information over SMS.
I hope that answers the question. And I believe it does. It was very clear. The next question is, you mentioned that a user must capture information and activate. Does this mean that if the user does not capture anything, it will not work?
So if the user doesn't enter their medical info on the phone, there is no way for us to know. So one, there isn't no way for us to know, also because this information is just stored on device. We don't have access to it. And so therefore, the device cannot share this information. But again, it's one, we are trying to make users aware of this possibility. Two, in some phones, is in the setup of the phone, and we know maybe there are some authorities there, and we know in some communities, authorities can also raise awareness and inform users. Hey, when you call for an ambulance, if you want your emergency contacts to be shared, you can add them to your phone. So we love your help.
I hope this does answer the question as well. I will take the next question from Irache. Hi, I'm assuming that we are not only talking about smartphone data, but also data from connected devices, right?
Okay, so if it's wearable devices, yes. Everything, I mean, most of the devices that run Android with Google Play services and are connected to internet, and they have a way to make emergency calls, and they have GPS and other sensors, then yes. If it's, I don't know, a fridge, most likely ELS won't work on a fridge.
Yes, and maybe to put a super fine point on it, right? Today, this works on Wear OS watches and on Android phones, and it doesn't integrate data. I don't know if this is what your question is getting at, but like from a different kind of heart rate sensor or a fall button or something like that. There's a whole universe of third-party devices out there. This is only speaking about Android phones and Android watches.
All right. There was, and yes, Irache was talking about wearable devices. She made a precision. Thank you, Irache. Another question from Lerefan was, is this something a user can turn on and off?
The user can opt out from this service. Obviously, it might be silly calling for an ambulance without sharing the information, but there is an opportunity for users to opt out. Opt-out rates are very low in general across the globe. But we provide the opportunity for users to opt out for ELS. When it comes to medical information and emergency contacts, there is a way for the user to specify if they want to share this information when they call an emergency or not. So the information might be available on the phone, but the user might decide not to share it during an emergency call. It could be a case of a user calling on behalf of somebody else. And so that could be a use case. but in general, we see when users type the medical information and emergency contacts, in general, they try to, they know that they can share it during an emergency call.
So it's just to come back to this, just because I wasn't sure what the question was exactly about. Again, the question was was written quite a long time ago. Is this something a user can turn on and off? So a user has to opt in, as far as I remember what you presented, Salvo, to share the medical data. However, ELS is in by default, but there is an option to opt out, which is almost not used, very little
Exactly.
used across the globe.
Yes.
For obvious reasons, and it was a controversial thing, long debated, let's say.
Yes.
All right. Sorry, I'm trying to follow the plan. Anyone also, if you want, some of you are responding to your peers. Please don't hesitate to use the chat as well in case you want to respond to your peers or make a comment, because only a few of us see the Q&A section. So, but here I'm going to pass the message from Henning. Henning is saying hello to Guido, who's from Germany as well. And he's saying that Henning plans to provide the additional data via his endpoint, Freiburg endpoint, as soon as he gets additional data. I'm sure Henning, Micah, and Salvo are already in contact about this, so have no doubt knowing those guys. All right, excellent. That was clear. Another question from Lerefan was, does this work with Android Auto? Example, involved in a car crash and Android Auto sends it instead of the motor vehicle manufacturer?
So the answer is yes, but it's not instead. So what happens is we are trying to integrate with various manufacturers to try to make sure that the location is sent only once. But what happens right now is if there is a car crash detection or if the user calls from the car, the ELS message runs independently from what happens in the car. We know in Europe there is the e-call. So in that case, the PSAP will receive the information twice. We are trying to understand if there is a way out, but obviously it's better having the location twice than having no location. So for now, that's the way it works.
And I'll just add one slight confusion to that to make the answer more complicated, which is there are actually two flavors of Android Auto. So there's Android Auto, which is a term that specifically means when your phone is plugged into the car. There's also something called There's also something called Android Automotive, which is when your car has a native Android device built into it. And just adding the clarification that this is not today supported on Android Automotive, the one where it's built into your car and you don't need a phone. What Salvo's talking about is in the case of Android Auto specifically, which I know is what your question asked, but they're confusingly named, so people often get them mixed up. Just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks for the clarification. I actually came across in my private life this difference about this difference lately. I was a bit lost as well. All right. There was another question by Amy, my colleague Amy. Do you have any plans to work with third-party sensor manufacturers, such as those that monitor glucose levels in diabetics?
That's an interesting feature request.
I can add, I think we don't have plans right now, but I think it's a super interesting idea. And in general, thank you, Amy, a great example of the sort of input that's super helpful from this community is great, given what we've just shared about what we're doing today, what else would be helpful? And that's something I think we can and should look into, and we'd love that and other input from this wonderful community about what else would be helpful.
But don't patent it.
Good point. All right, excellent. I have a question actually, and anyone feel free to add more questions. Any attendees, the question Q&A section is still open, so feel free to add questions. On my side, I had a few questions as well. So what I understand from the medical information is that it's only what users encode manually. There's no other input from any health apps. So why was this choice made not to use any of the health apps monitoring it live and constantly, and to have it used in with ELS? And what do you think about the risk of being incorrect? Because if I encode my data, my health data now, and I forget to update it in the next 3 years, might not be the same though.
So as part of the ELS message, we also share when was the last time that this information was updated. So that data is available. And on your first question is, and obviously we are thinking about sending reminders to users if the information is stale for a long time. My weight has changed significantly in the last years. That's an example. On your first question, it's all about making sure that there are the right settings in place for users. You want to make sure that the user is aware that the information might be shared when you make an emergency call. And so probably we need to think about ways to or work with third parties to plug that information into the safety app of each phone, or give the user a warning, hey, when you call for emergency, your Google's level might be shared automatically. So those are the two models, but there's also work to do. There are many apps that monitor.
So to be very clear, it's not completely excluded that, I mean, I'm not personally using any of these health apps. Maybe I should, but I'm not. So I'm not very familiar with this market. But let's say Samsung health apps, it's not unlikely that in the future it would be connected to ELS and updated health information may be sent over to the PSAPs as well. It's not.
So if an app has been flagged as safety app, then there is already an SDK available for them to plug into ELS. That's already live today.
Okay, sorry to continue the question. Does this mean that accurate daily information from a health monitoring app could already appear in the ELS message, basically?
Maybe the confusion is the Samsung Health example. So there's no intention that we're integrated with like daily health monitoring apps or other like wearable sensors or anything like that. The intention at this point in time is singly that ELS is connected to one app on your phone, and that is the system app that provides medical information and emergency contacts. That app might be provided by an OEM that makes that phone. And there are many OEMs that manufacture Android phones. And so what Salvo's saying is that for those system safety apps, there's a way available today to connect them to ELS. I think in the future, you're asking Gary a good question about like, might we be able to expand that universe? And I think the answer is notionally yes, but I think one thing we also want to see first is that this information is really useful. I think thinking about that third-party universe, it's still like very complicated. Whereas there's one app today on each phone that we can be connected to. This opens the floodgates to many. I think it raises lots of questions about user privacy and consent, and also about usefulness to PSAPs on the other end of the line. And so I think that's another place where this community can be helpful, A, by showing us that this information is useful to you and telling us about how, and B, by helping to guide us in terms of what else is most useful to you and why. So then we can think about how we might be able to make that happen.
Excellent.
Does that make sense, though? The difference between the Samsung Health app just might be a confusing reference to like, it could mean Samsung's safety app on their phone, which they can integrate in today's configuration.
It makes sense. Yes. Thank you. I will read the new questions that we received. So the question, which I'm sure you will love, are you aware if Apple is using a similar app with a similar protocol? If we want to be able to work with your app, we also have to enable it for third-party apps.
I think this is a question for Apple.
I would agree. If you wish, I can take this one, not to put anyone in trouble.
Go for it.
Yes. What I can say is that there will be today the registration open the registration is open to the EENA conference in Valencia, 24 to 26 of April. And there will be a session inside that features about transmitting medical data that features Google and Apple, as well as another speaker.
If I can add to and use the opportunity also for another shameless plug, we'd love to have an example of a PSAP that integrates Android additional emergency information. We already signed up for a presentation where we share more details, but we'd love to see if PSAP wants to partner with us and present how they change the way they operate by having this information available. So if you want to be on stage with us, please send us an email and we'll start to work with you. Prepare for it.
So that's a very good call from Salvo and Micah. In order, what Salvo and Micah would like to do is to come to Valencia at the EENA conference at the end of April with a speaker from hopefully this audience, who would in the next weeks trial what has been presented today with a PSAP, and that PSAP would also come on stage and present with Salvo and Micah in Valencia in the session we talked about with Google and Apple.
And it's free of charge. Free of charge. We already paid.
Yes, not free of charge for you guys, but free of charge for the PSAP too.
Yes.
Yes. All right.
I can also take a swing at the question very directly, Andre, just to say, I think there are you need a different integration for the way that Android sends data versus the way that iOS phones send data today. These are different, they're sort of different structures, as I understand it. But the one Android implementation will serve you across the entire Android ecosystem. And by you need a different integration, specifically, we mean the software that you're using, whether that's something over the top like a Rapid SOS or a Carbine, or whether ELS data today comes into your CAD. That CAD vendor or over the top software vendor would need to integrate once with our system to be able to have their software process the data that comes in the way that it arrives from Android phones, and then they could enable it for as many of their customers as they wanted. So I hope that helps. And we hope that doing the integration with the Android data is a worthwhile exercise for you. Yeah.
I hope this answers your question, Andre. The next question was again from Lerefan. Could it potentially integrate / push data from Google Fit?
That's an interesting feature request. Again, please don't patent it, but I think the key is awareness for the user. So we want to make sure that we comply with all the legislation in every country. That's why it's important that we take this seriously. On what Micah mentioned earlier, sometimes we feel that we try to enable features for the sake of it, but what we are working on is we want to make sure that those features are used and useful. And so please show us how this information is used right now, and we would love to then extend it. We just don't want to overwhelm PSAPs with information, and then that information is not used. It's all about being practical and efficient.
Yes, and that's why I think there is a slide here that we have in front of us. What new additional data might be helpful? And I think so. We haven't planned for a survey in this webinar, but please use the chat section. I mean, we'd love. I mean, folks at Google would love to get your feedback. Is additional dispatchable / semantic location, when they have high confidence, useful? This means, for instance, your home address or your work address, which they know with a very high confidence, for instance. Is that something useful to share in addition to the dynamic location? Don't hesitate to respond, for instance, yes or no in the chat, or anywhere you can post a message. It would be good for the folks at Google to know if this is. So for now, I'm not saying much. Maybe the chat isn't working, but please do let us know, or let them know by email as well if it's useful. Yeah. I see the chat is working. All right.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, also for call source, we hear from everybody that unwanted and abandoned calls are a big problem. In some PSAPs, is over 40% of the calls are unwanted emergency calls that are taking a toll on call takers that need to work 50% of the time answering calls that are not real emergencies. So for us, giving a call source or activity detection, like if you know that that call comes from a phone that is in the pocket, from the lock screen, is it something, is useful information? What can you do if you have that information? Like brainstorming on solutions for it is applying technology to make your life and the user's life better.
If I may comment on this one, this is something that is demanded by some of our members to have this feature, as you know, and I would definitely, I think, speak on behalf of my colleagues as well, that this is something that would be super nice to have the call source to be able to better segment the calls and possibly filter them when there are troubles. I'm sure some of the people in this call think the same. The other thing you mentioned the battery percentage, which, so if I understand well, it's not included yet in the HTTPS message.
No, so right now what we have in the ELS configuration, we trigger ELS only if the phone has more than a certain level of battery available. Mm-hmm. So if the user has only, for example, 1% battery, ELS doesn't trigger because it would use the battery of whatever, and we prefer the user to be on the phone for it. But if the battery is, for example, 10% and the call taker is on the phone with somebody, knowing that the person has only 10% left of battery might be useful information. That's why it's one of the things that we had in mind. But again, we've loved your input. We are not the users. We try to visit as many PSAPs as we can, but obviously we don't work every day on it. So having feedback on that would be useful.
Any feedback from the audience on battery percentage? Getting that information in the message, would it be useful? Let's give them time to respond. Please feel free to respond using the chat if you want. Many people are saying yes, and some people are saying yes and sure. It would be nice to have as well. Another one was indoor versus outdoor detection. Maybe you want to explain. So I'm guessing it's quite straightforward, actually.
So the idea is, and it could be related to the closest point of contact, knowing, so we can try to use AI to understand, based on the signals we have, if the user is inside the building or outside of a building. We assume this information might be useful for fire brigade or ambulance. Is this something you ask when you're on a call, or is it something that you think might be useful? That's another thing we could work on. And again, we would share this information only if we have a certain level of confidence that the information is accurate enough.
What do you think, audience? Useful or not? I also saw some people using thumbs, and I think that thumbs are also a good way to let know if it's useful.
And it's okay to say no.
It's okay to, yes, it's okay to say
okay
no
to
as
say
well.
No.
In fact, it's really helpful to say no too,
yes.
not to like bias against this answer, but we would love to add everything. Small team, we have to prioritize, and we want to make sure also that the things that we add, we can spend time supporting to make sure we help, provide instructions and do webinars like this to help folks adopt them. So that limits inherently the number of these that we can support in any given year. So your help to tell us with brutal honesty what is the most helpful will really help shape what we do go then build.
In a few cases, it could be helpful. Henning is saying for the.
That's almost a no.
Maybe a polite no, but it could be useful in some instances. I can imagine. Not that's yeah. As Micah and Salvo said, it's important to say no, because knowing those guys, they will be working on it and then delivering on it. So better be useful. For them, because it's a lot of work. I can only guess to deliver all this. So.
Or sometimes what happens is we see examples where the information is available, but it's not shown to the call taker. That's one thing that happens. Or the second thing is the call taker has to go through a script. And if that information is available, the call taker is still asking over the phone, then we are not creating the level of efficiency they would like to. So it's also important to look at this feature end to end. Is this something that might reduce your script? Is this something that would change the way a PSAP operates? So it's important to look at the big picture and see the level of efficiencies that we can reach and the time that we can save, etc.
So the next one was activity detection. So is the caller running
or is the phone in the pocket? Is the user walking? Is the user running? Is the user not moving? Information.
Riding a bicycle, in a car, on a train, on an airplane. Those are the sorts of things we think about when we think about activity recognition.
useful or not to have this activity detection? Is it activity before the activation or after?
It's probably before.
Probably before, yeah. So
Also because we use data that is available before the call.
activity detection would be helpful, is saying Henning, especially to classify it if it's a false calls.
This is similar feedback we receive, like call source plus activity detection is probably the best input to recognize a false call.
Yeah, for instance, at EENA, I often get pocket calls. My colleagues know, and it's a running joke at EENA from Freddie, from my colleague Freddie, and often when I'm napping. And I usually know that Freddie has been either walking fast or is having his run or something. You know, it would be useful that my phone is able to detect it's a run. You know, it's Freddie's running time, and it's giving me a pocket call. Sorry, Freddie. I don't speak.
It is good to know if the user was skiing before the fall.
Yes. That's a very good point. So I think activity detection, it seems quite a big support here for activity support, activity detection.
Andre has a cool idea about G-forces too, which is sort of related, but not quite the same, right? But being able to understand the potential extent of trauma injuries. I like that idea. That's cool.
Yeah.
There was quite some work done with that for the crash by some companies in the US as well, in the context of car crash. But, all right, excellent. The other one was closes business, and we are getting to the end of this webinar, so I just want to make sure we don't last too long. Closes business landmark, which is what you mentioned, that some PSAPs are requesting to you that sometimes they want the landmark is more useful than the streets or the location.
They call it point of interest. Like, are you close to a McDonald's? Are you close to a gas station? Like, what do you see? This is the equivalent of asking, what do you see in a call?
Is that any useful to some of you in the call? I'm wondering, actually. I've seen different use of this in different PSAPs. Is it useful to get in addition to the AML location, ELS in that case?
Or is this something that call takers look at the map? Like, I've seen a call taker just trying to get the closest point of interest. This is something we could do on their behalf. Yes, that was that. What Henning wrote is exactly my point. If this is something that the call taker spends time doing, we could do it directly.
Sorry, which comment were you acting on?
Henning wrote.
Henning, yeah.
This is not important because we have the point of interest in our CAD.
Yes. Okay. So it's, yeah, I think this one is rather shared because I think it wouldn't be used the same way. I've seen PSAPs using this information in very different manners. For them, won't be useful. For some, would be useful because they use it a lot. That one is but as well. I'm guessing you have all these can be taken as options. So although they are part of the ELS message, if they end up being part, not all of this need to be taken by the PSAPs in their own configuration. And I would say better to have it available and not in case you can make it, of course. So,
And in some cases can be used to verify as well.
Excellent. So we are coming 3 minutes to the end of this webinar. I think we're going to stop here. I don't see any more questions. I'm sorry if I missed one, but I don't think so. Sorry, a Q&A. Sorry, there is a last question. All information are interesting. The question is how good they will be integrated in a CAD system. I think it was more a comment from Guido. Yes, which is basically, as you can have all the data you want, then it needs to be displayed and usable and used well. We agree on this point. All right, so we're coming to the end of this webinar. I have a few words for all of you. So let's hope this webinar has inspired you and led you to think about how medical data from smartphones could possibly be used in your own PSAPs. Please don't hesitate to contact us or the folks at Google. The email address is on the screen. Please take it, photograph it, screenshot it. To other folks at Google, if you wish to follow up, and I think they really hope to get emails from you. If you're interested in this topic, I will repeat that we have a session dedicated to it at the next EENA conference in Valencia, 24 to 26 April 2024. By the way, registrations open this morning to the conference, so most of you must have got an email. Otherwise, you go on our website and you can already register to the EENA conference to be able to attend. A reminder that the conference is free for all public safety authorities, NGOs, emergency services, etc. And companies already member of EENA as well. Next webinars, the next week, we have a fantastic webinar on native real-time text on 14th of December at 2:30 p.m. CET. This webinar will report on the first end-to-end native RTT to PSAP deployment in the world, which took place in the US. On 29 January at 2:30 p.m., the webinar will present Galileo Emergency Warning Satellite Service. And on 30 January, the European Innovations Council's funding opportunities will be presented to the audience. Sorry, it's 2 webinars in 2 days in a row, but those are the only dates that could be found with the speakers. You can register to these webinars via our website. By the way, a big thank you again to Salvo and Micah for taking the time and delivering a great presentation and workshop. Micah, special thanks again because you woke up so early. And since we have a call with both of you later on today, we'll see each other in a few hours for our regular catch-up. Thank you. And then it's time to wish you all a great afternoon, evening, or morning, or early morning for Micah, and see you all very soon. Goodbye.